Okay, so here we are, the Aging Arborist podcast, episode 4, and I'm grinning because Desmond, our guest, Brick, and myself have been sitting here for 30, 45 minutes already just having a conversation. So we're fully immersed in some deep stuff, but we realize we have to do an official kickoff. So something a little bit different today, and this is just from the standpoint of it is very easy for us to bring in a guest like Mark Chisholm, bring in someone like Todd Pearson runs a big business, and you can keep running people through this door that have these giant footprints in the industry. And I was talking to Desmond before and Brick as well, that I own a business, but I still have calluses on my hands. I still get up every day and pack my lunch. I still go to work. I still rake and pick up sticks, although it's not my favorite thing to do, admittedly. But we thought it was very important to bring someone in who works in the industry so that all of y'all out there who work and maybe can't identify with one of these people that runs 4 crews and 15 guys and, has world champion climber status, it's hard to sometimes see yourself in that light. So we want to bring someone in. Desmond's a worker. He loves the industry. He's passionate. He's not only a tree worker. He has a rich, full life outside of trees. And hopefully, if our conversation allows, we'll dig into some of that as well. But I just want to kick it off. I want to welcome Desmond. I want to thank him for coming in. There's a whole story and a connection between Brick and Desmond that we want to definitely dig into. So Desmond, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
I appreciate it.
So appreciate you being here.
Super grateful for the opportunity.
All right. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. And it's funny, Desmond admitted earlier, like, hey man, like I'm a little nervous. And to be quite frank and honest, like excitement and nervousness really come from the same kind of energy. And I just encourage him, like, the whole vibe of this podcast is just like we bring people in where there's some type of connection or similar vibe. We vibe on the same frequency. And it's just kind of us chit-chatting, talking, having a conversation 100%. And recording it so that maybe there's an insight, maybe there's a little nugget of value that can be pushed out into the community and somebody benefits from it. And that's really...
No, that's been the whole goal of the Aging Arborist podcast, is to do that, to leave content behind that people can hopefully get something from it or share it. I just wanted a beautiful intro, and obviously we work together every day.
What up, man?
Yeah, what up? Yeah, exactly. But no, honestly, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
This is another cool experience that we have together, But just for the listeners or the people watching, I need you guys to understand that yes, Desmond is I would like to quote a beginner in the industry, but the key difference is he has accepted the responsibility to be the best version of himself in this industry, to be the best arborist that the trees need.
Correct.
And I feel like I want to drive that home because, and not to knock people or anything, but there's a lot of people coming in. There's a lot of bravado. There's a lot of wanting to dominate obstacles, maybe prove themselves. And there's more to it than that. That's like one half maybe of the sphere, the half of the sphere, like the yin yang. Half of that is to be that person, learn and grow and everything else. But then the other half is, to your point, the other half is to be who you are and make that, as Chisholm was saying, marry really well. Marry really well. And then now you get a nice, solid, wholesome individual in the industry.
Correct.
And I told you this before, but you had we have a relationship for 8 months, let's say, right? But the first, and I'm going with 4, but let's get the first 4, you didn't have that yet.
No, absolutely not.
Okay. So now, and not by me saying you're anointed, so to speak, but you have that now. And it's going to be really exciting and fun to see your growth in this industry.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, can I? So you're actually prompting a great question, and I did write some stuff down, but it's a beautiful segue into Okay, so there was a point in time when Bricks is like, you didn't have that, and now you have that. So I guess what I'm asking really is, can you, or would you be willing to just unpack a little bit? So you come in, first of all right, this is what I do. I go down rabbit trails.
Yep.
We'll start with, you were in line clearance before, yes?
Correct.
How long did you do that?
Line clearance for about 4 years.
Okay.
4 years. The ground guy most of the time.
Okay.
I just recently started climbing about 2 years prior to me working with Brick.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But ground guy extraordinaire, running from the first truck to the last truck.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So then you made a transition. Now, how long? So I'll just follow that sort of that line of questioning, and also by way of intro, because it kind of gets people a sense of who you are. So started out in line clearance. You made a transition.
Absolutely.
What was the driving force between you wanting to leave line clearance and then where you are now? Like what was the motivator that made you decide, like, you know what, I'm looking around, I see this industry, I want to step away from this?
Well, it was Instagram to begin with, but also me making a decision to involve myself by going to TCIA, because I had seen TCIA a couple times. I can't go. I'm working.
Right.
You know, line clearance, if you miss a day, you're a part-timer. You know what I mean? So I decided to go to my first one, and it completely changed my perception of what I thought was the entire industry.
Okay.
Because if you talk to line clearance guys, line clearance, they're in their own world. Line clearance is its own thing. And then there's this whole new world, which is the arboricultural industry.
Interesting.
Single line, double line, you know. So Instagram, TCIA, and I just didn't feel like I was being presented with the level of mastery that I wanted, that I thought that I should be seeing.
Okay.
And I wanted to make that transition, and I put the energy out there.
That's awesome. So how long ago was that first DCIA? Was that
2022?
Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty recent. I mean,
yeah,
couple
pretty recent.
years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Awesome. So you saw the industry bigger, like it gave you a bigger vision.
Yeah.
Instead of like, sometimes you're in your own world. And I find that even with small companies, right? Like someone works at a small company. I mean, let's even say like 15 guys or less.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at the industry through a keyhole. We live in our fishbowl.
Correct.
We live and we see our competitors, and we think the world is this big.
And that's line clearance.
You step on a trade show floor like that.
And then there's what is all of this?
The educational seminars.
Yes. What?
So when you went to that one in 2020, first of all, you remember where that one was?
I'm pretty sure that was in Charlotte.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
Cool. Nice little city.
Yeah.
That's a great show.
Yeah.
So what was the single biggest takeaway from that? Like you went.
I was overwhelmed.
First of all, was it instantaneous? Like, did you walk in and go, oh, yes, wow, changes are coming?
100%. Like I said, because I was paying attention to people in the industry and trying to understand why my particular part of the industry was like this. But then throughout time, I got the understanding of line clearance is line clearance. Our job is to clear the lines, make sure that people have power.
Yep.
But there's other things that can happen in the industry that does not involve the power lines. And yeah, it was just that complete sensory gear, everything, just people, just Amish. What?
Yeah, right. Okay.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
What? I don't see this on the side of the road. Right. You know, and it was eye opening, and you know, yeah,
that's cool. All right, so this happens, and then I'm curious, like, how did you? It's interesting to me, and I wrote this, and we talked a little bit about this before. How did the job with Brick happen? Was it just a random thing, like that you were near you live sort of near there. You saw the ad. You know, you had a conversation with like.
I can jump in on that because it's one of the things that I do. It's not often, but one of the things I do is if I see social media posts of somebody working in Milburn Township, I always make it a point to reach out to them.
Really?
100%.
Okay,
I will go to the job site. I will go to the location. I will connect with all people on the crew, not just the one person on social media. And he happened to be one of them that I saw social media posts. I'm like, hey, you're working in my town, so to speak. And where you at?
This ain't big enough for both of us.
I know. I know.
Totally all mine.
And if I can just add really quick.
Of course.
Before that, because I'm obsessive about the industry.
Yeah.
So I started going down the rabbit hole of gear and whatnot. And the first inkling I got of brick was with the K1 Keeper. And that's where I like started looking like lanyard management and stuff like that. And then I tagged him a bunch of times. I'm like, who is this guy? You know what I mean? And he doesn't know this, but because of our conversation prior to that, I specifically tagged my location. Not knowing, I never tagged my location, but I specifically tagged my location. And then he messaged me, he's like, you're in my town. And I was like, what? You work here? Yeah. Okay. And then
I did not know that.
I know.
No, that's
new. That's cool.
Sneaky.
We just uncovered this right here. This is good.
Wow. So with that being said, showed up to a job, connected with him and the crew. He leaves, he's come back another time, same thing. And then I knew that comparable line clearance, salaries, benefits can be comparable to the township depending on where you're working. So we had an opening, and there's a couple people that I pitched it to, and he was one of them. And by the time I pitched it to you and the time that you worked with us, probably was a year
roughly.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it wasn't. It didn't take that long. I knew.
But it also wasn't like an immediate thing.
No,
so it had to percolate a little bit and whatnot.
Exactly.
So here's one, Todd, why tree work? Like,
there you go. Beautiful.
Like, in other words, like you said, you're passionate about the industry, and I get that talking to you, and you're at everything, which is cool. You're a natural networker. I see you having conversations, shaking hands, looking people in the eye. I mean, that's kind of how I started seeing you. And this is a funny theme. It's like, before I knew you, I saw you. Yeah. And so we kind of like whatever. And then I noticed you were showing up on people's posts, commenting this and that. And I'm kind of like, oh, who is this person? And then I see you at like Garden State Tree. And so, and we get the whole passion about the industry thing. Like, okay, that's something we've developed over the years. So what is it about it? What fuels that drive in you that makes you a gearhead, the tree? Like, just walk me through a little bit about that.
It's the trees.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with the gear.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with, what the industry represents. It's, for me, I had a relationship with trees and understanding trees and whatnot prior to me understanding what type of tree is that, or how does that tree bend, or how does that tree fall, or how does it look in the wintertime? How can you tell what tree that is in the wintertime?
Yep.
And just to add this small little adage right here, Snapchat, one of my friends that doesn't normally do tree work posted some tree related work on his Snapchat. Keep in mind, I don't have Snapchat now, but I saw him on Snapchat and I'm like, what are you doing? You're not an outdoorsy, you're fishing, what are you doing here? And he's like, do you mind being outside? I was like, what? I love being outside. If I could live outside, I'd live outside, And then he's like, yeah, we work all the time, line clearance work, so on and so forth. And I was like, wait a minute. So with trees? Oh yeah. Okay. Totally. I'm in there. 100%. And here I am.
I was ultimately trying to get to the point where when you first came, you talked about him not having the other side of the sphere, the self-development, and now he does. So
let me emphasize, it's not that he didn't have this self-development. and this is something that we
I got it. If you don't got it, I got it.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. You're the guest.
Okay.
Go for it.
Line clearance.
Mhm.
Again, you got to know what you're doing, even if you don't know what you're doing. And that we spoke about this throughout the 8 months being with Brick. It's Dunning-Kruger. That's what I came to him with, Dunning-Kruger. Like, I think I know what I'm doing, but I really don't know what I'm doing.
I gotcha.
I think I'm the best at what I'm doing, but I'm not the best at what I'm doing. And it was that inability to actually have someone that is willing to teach you, that's way better than you, that literally put their time into the industry. That's like, he's about to tie his shoe wrong. I wonder if I should say something. I'm going to wait. He's going to look at me right now. That's literally what Brick did. And then there was apprehension on my part, not with obviously the shoe, but just me climbing and the things that I thought that I learned were not proper.
Okay. So was that process like difficult? Like, was there a letting go for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it was more or less, conversations that I had with my brother and a couple friends, and my brother, who's in the military, described Brick as an intrusive leader. And I was like, I'm not used to that.
Or he would just like speak.
Yeah, no, he's just he's curious to a fault, but he's curious to actually, you're here with me. We're doing the same thing. Why wouldn't you want to take what I'm saying if you understand that I've been doing this for X amount of years? And that's the basis of me. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I have to jump in. It's not that I've been doing it for X amount of years. It's that I've been learning and growing in the last 8 years. And those last 8 years have taught, going back to your point, has pretty much coincided with a higher level of self-development. And that's what I was saying. It was like, it's not because I've done it for a long time. It's be like, listen, you want in or you want out? You want in, then it requires work.
So into what though specifically?
Whatever it is. Yeah. So it's
I want to be specific for the
right.
listeners.
No, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just have to add that within that point in time, we could go into like small little minute details of stories and whatnot. But are you willing to do the work? Was the basis of it. You're not doing this correctly. I can see that you're not doing this correctly. And I've been learning consistently over X amount of years. I apologize for saying I've been doing this for a long time because we had that 34 years, man. Anyway.
Yes.
Consistently for X amount of time. So I had to learn to accept that. And that's where everything changed for me.
So when you got there, here's something I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Was what you thought you were going to get by going there different from what you actually got when you got there?
I'm interested myself.
Okay.
Do you follow me?
First and foremost, the environment completely different.
Okay.
Secondly, Brick, it's him in the industry and me understanding what needs to happen to be the best or to be at my best, which is the standard. Something as simple as how you hold the saw.
Yeah.
Something as simple as if you slept. Line clearance, I'd work 16, 24, however many out, and I'd be to work the next day.
Yeah.
I didn't care about sleep. What? Line clearance. This is what we do.
Yeah.
But I learned that was detrimental to growth, process, understanding, health.
I was going to hit that if you didn't.
So yeah, that was the basis of that.
So you found something different when you 100%. Arrived. Now, and I guess the original question was, And just to drill into you a little bit, was what you found different than, so it was different. We acknowledge that. Was it different than you had to come into it with an expectation? I would think like, hey, tomorrow's my first day. I wonder what this first week's going to be like working at the township with Brick. I think it's probably going to be a little bit like XYZ. And then you get there, and was it XYZ or was it PDQ? Like, was there a differentiation between what you perceived it would be?
The first day he was jumping rope. So I was like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I'm ready for this.
Okay.
This is cool. Okay. Because like I said, before we started recording, I put it into the universe that for me, tree work is a workout, not necessarily so that I don't have to go to the gym, but if I exhaust myself and I purposely move in a type of way, it's calisthenics. It's a body workout that you have to pay attention to how you're moving.
Yeah.
So seeing him and him being at the level that he's at on the first day, inspecting my gear and my trinkets.
Oh, this is great.
And then jumping rope. Jumping rope, it was like, oh, yeah. Okay, I've never seen anyone.
Now, was that a warm up? Is that
to
get the warm up?
Okay, to get ready to see where I'm at, climbing wise. Yeah,
the warm, which is his point. The warm up and jump rope. But with him, like because I'm climbing still.
Yep.
So he's climbing, but I'm gonna do what I do because all the years that I put in trying to learn, grow, self improvement, all that stuff. But the gear inspection and everything else was to make sure that now that he's working with me, that he's safe. That's my job.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My job is as a supervisor, but also as a human being. Like if we're working together, we don't want to work and let somebody else get hurt. And that can be a whole separate conversation because I know where that goes. But I'll flip it back to you. But the I would imagine the interest is. So you come from line clearance, you have a set way of doing things.
Correct.
Then you come and work with me. There's obviously going to be a shakeup, and anytime you go to a different company or business, it's going to be the same thing. But I just want to drive home the point that he already is the type of person that was working and always willing to work on self-development. But how far can you do that on your own is really what it comes down to. You read books, you do this, but at some point you're going to have to run into people, depending on what profession, industry, then essentially mentors. Yeah. That's what it comes down to. And I think that's the initial, I'll let you take back over, but that's the initial, let's just go with the first 4 months. But then there was a point, which you have to figure that out, there's a point where it switches over to where like, okay, like now he's self-improving with the standard that he understands now.
And that was approximately the 4th or 5th month. I'm generally introspective. So most times when situations would happen, I'd internally, is it me? Is it me? It's got to be me because he's actually trying to help me. And I understood that. But again, the idea and work procedures in line clearance did not permit that. It was more, what word am I looking for? Condescending as opposed to uplifting and understanding. Well, why do you do that? Why are you doing that?
Isn't it amazing how just tone and inflection make that whole thing?
Yeah.
Like, it's just amazing as humans when we communicate how we can make such a big difference.
Almost saying the same thing.
Yeah, saying the same words. Thing. The verbiage is the same, but the intention is completely
different.
It's true. It's true. Because there was a curiosity, since we're doing the podcast, there was a curiosity of now that you're on, you know what I mean? Like there's a sense that you're on the standard, you're on the path. Where, and I think it's a cool question to kind of figure out, where do you see yourself going in the next 3 to 5 years? Or or growing into?
Growing. I'm gonna start running a lot more. I'm gonna get a lot more fit because this is also another thing. It's forcing me to work optimally. But in order to do that, I have to do all of the things. I have to eat right. I have to sleep right. I have to do everything that is the chair, right?
The chair.
The
stool.
The stool.
Three-legged stool?
So there's a part of a talk, three-legged stool.
Yeah.
You know about.
I'm familiar.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So I just say that.
But let's
Oh yeah. No. So
clarify for the
just the
listeners.
idea of the three-legged stool with the top. Obviously, nutrition, how you eat, sleep is a big one. We can dive into it, but the idea of sleep is really the only time you get to repair your brain.
Yeah.
And if your brain is repaired, the brain can do its job and repair the body. Right? So we got nutrition, sleep, movement. People say exercise, weightlifting, this, that is fine, but the idea is that you're still moving because, as you guys know, that when things don't move, they die.
Yeah, they seize up.
Seize up. So that's the 3 legs, and then the top is hydration because you need to have something to be able to make it all work together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just feel I need to interject, for the listeners, but also like just by means of like keeping the conversation going is that I've seen a lot of folks come and go in my business, but also over the 31 years in business, I've had a multitude of contract climbers move through my space. Probably 10 different guys over the last, say, 20 years. I'm always amazed, and I always look at how they handle their lunch. I won't necessarily speak into it, but I've seen guys run to gas stations and get, a hot dog off of the little roller thingy. I've seen people show up with Lunchables, with Uncrustables. And listen, if that's you out there and you're listening, look, that's fine. I'm going to hit it with the old you do you. My family's been on a journey. And admittedly, I didn't start here.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm speaking from a standpoint of having been on the path, as you said, for a long time. Just so the fact that you acknowledge that the nutrition is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Is big. And I think a lot of guys, a lot of people, and just for the audience, when I say guys, I don't mean men necessarily. Guys is that general term. I know we have a lot of females in the industry and definitely blessed by that. I love that. That's great. We're a supporter. So just for clarity, I say guys a lot, and I mean all of you out there. Okay. So that to be clear. But yeah, the nutritional part is a component that I think a lot of people miss.
Right.
And I have the benefit of being an older person and understanding that you can get away with eating that stuff for a while. When you're in your 20s, you can be a vacuum cleaner and just give me all of it. I want all the sugar, the donuts, the coffee, the sugar, and you get to a certain point and, I'd say about 35 to 40-year-old women, Brick, you're 44, so you can speak to this. Maybe you have felt a little bit of that change, the pliability of the body, the resilience, the recovery, all these things change. And now I'm well over 50, almost 60. And I realize that I'm actually glad I've been sewing into that now for 15 years.
And if I can add, I don't know how to describe this, but call it whatever it is. People say, oh, you're an old soul, but I've lived my life essentially physically as if I know that I'm going to get old. So there was a couple things that I was telling people that I'm 30 now, but I'm 60 in my mind. So the amount of nutrients and things that I have like lined on my wall that I take in the morning and stuff like that, I'm preparing for then now. I'm preparing mobility wise, brain wise, muscle mass wise now. And I got trapped essentially in the line clearance bubble of we'll go to the gas station. That hot dog that you talk about, you'll eat the hot dog after lunch or whatever, a big lunch or whatever. After lunch, you're useless. right? So after lunch, you're useless. But the difference between that concept and ideology for me was I would push myself to see what I intook that morning, how it affected me. Yeah. And I would literally feel sluggish to the point where I'm like, oh no, this is not going to work. If I want to push myself beyond the limit that I feel that I should go, then what I'm eating is not going to work for me. And I have a big thing about my stomach feeling heavy because I used to run track.
Okay.
So I've gained a considerable amount of weight since then. Okay. But the lighter I feel, the better for me. And that goes with food on my stomach. So, yeah.
I mean, I happen to concur.
Yeah.
No, and I'm saying that's been a lesson I've learned. So my wife, I mean, this is a ministry for her. She packs my lunch.
That's amazing.
I used to do it, and she was getting up with the kids. She's like, I'm just going to pack your lunch. I'm like, okay. But there's components in it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of grazing stuff in there. Mm-hmm. There's usually and we eat a lot of just really good whole organic, it's like a paleo
whole
thing.
Foods.
But I eat whole foods. I eat grass, pasture raised meats and, free range chicken. Like everything we do, we believe we are what our food eats.
Correct.
We try to support farms that do that. Like there's this whole standard that we try to live. It's a lot more expensive, but we also believe we pay on the front end and we won't have to pay on the back end with medical bills and things like that. But those foods that we intake and how much I put in while I'm working. So we break for lunch, it's a half an hour. I'm better off with about 15 minutes. So like drink a drink, not vodka. Drink some liquid, right? And then snack, eat something light, not have that massive blood sugar plunge after lunch and become a total turd after lunch.
Which goes to the point of what I was saying before. There's two things I want to say. One is that's what affects movement. If you eat that way, when you get that correction, you not only do you feel useless, but you also just putting yourself in a position when you're not benefiting from movement. Like it's so critical. People understand that. Like I can't drive that home enough because the idea, if you keep moving, you're always benefiting. If you eat junky and crappy, you slow down, you're not benefiting anymore.
Understood.
You know what I mean? Yep. So, and then second point that I want to add for the listeners, and you guys already know this, but I think it's important to let the listeners know, because while we talk about this, there's a sense of it has to be 100% correct. You have to be Rocky Balboa. If you don't do it, this is not going to work. And I want to make sure that it's clear. The best way that I found is to always go with an 80-20 mindset to start off with. If you have to do 60-40 or whatever, but the idea is play with those numbers. So this way you don't beat yourself up over how you're eating. And then this way, since you're not beating yourself up, you can actually make progress towards getting to the 80-20 and sometimes even 90-10. And then if you're really up for it, go for the 100%, eating clean, whole foods, all the stuff that actually benefit the body. But like I said, I mean, you guys can agree. For the listeners, I want to drive that home. Like when you go to the gas station, we're not knocking you for that. And I want to make sure that's clear. But at some point in your life, it's going to catch up to you, like we're saying. And the best way to approach that is just understand that how you fuel your body to do the type of hard labor that we're doing, it's beneficial. Yeah. Like don't make it work against you. It just doesn't make sense.
No. And it's interesting. A couple things. One is I want to make sure that, there's if there are going to be points of discussion on this podcast, and it's going to bring a little bit of, and I'm not saying we're spouting truth here, like we're somehow purveyors of truth. That's not really it. It's an experimentation of life. We're living life. We're curious. I love what you said about like you made notes of how you felt. You eat certain things. You're like, you know what? No, that's not going to work.
Right.
But if you're feeling here's the thing. When someone speaks truth into my life and initially I'm uncomfortable, I have to say to myself, and I wanted to actually give you kudos for this, Desmond, was that the best question you can ask, even if the person is completely nuts. I had a guy on the road rage on me yesterday, And the first question I asked was it me?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can't change that dude, but I can change my approach.
Mm-hmm.
I can't change someone on my crew. Now I can influence them if I'm getting an A+ on the test. If I'm getting 100%, right?
Exactly.
My sphere of influence will increase if my behavior is proper.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't change them. I can only change me. So that kudos to you for that question.
I appreciate that.
But on the diet stuff, just I'll kind of put a pin in it right here, and we can go down that rabbit hole. Is what worked for me, and we're on a continuum, right? In other words, we're on a path. Some people are further along. Some people still eat a lot of sugar, but maybe they don't eat some other things, or somebody cut out wheat, but they still drink a lot, or. So again, it's not about attacking people. It's just saying like maybe these tools will help you. And what helped me was just eliminating. So I looked at what's good and I looked at what's bad. And I was like, let me take out something that's bad and let me add something that's good.
Okay.
So what I did was like early on back in my CrossFit days in my mid 40s, I was in that culture of like paleo. And that has helped a lot in my life because I do dairy. So that's not quote paleo, but
right.
I eat paleo. So what I did is the first thing I did was just cut out white sugar. I just was like, no more with the processed sugar, no more with the fructose corn syrup, no more. And so like just one by one began to take a look at what's bad and eliminate that thing and start there.
And if I can add,
of course.
There was a point that I was completely vegan, and the level of down the rabbit hole you can go, it's like people have memes about it now. It's like you won't eat anything because look at the culture of America and look at the convenience of the culture of America.
Yep.
So you go into the grocery store, and this was me, unfortunately, I have to say it like this.
Yeah.
Every single thing that I put on or in my body, I would look up the ingredients of, and guess what they were? Mostly plants. Right? Or a derivative of a plant, right? So if I had the time or was disciplined enough to make the time to make the things that I bought from the grocery store, it would benefit me more. But what's happening is that a lot of these things are GMO, lab, whatever.
Yeah.
So you have to find the closest thing to the original source as opposed to just going outside and just grabbing a branch and just eating a branch or whatever, piece of leaf.
Yeah.
But I felt like an athlete when I ate vegan because it was the level of, in my opinion, the level of performance that I felt that I had, I didn't feel like I was my body. I felt like I was literally just moving through space as a spirit. My body was not heavy at all. Like it was just, and my mind was clear. I was just operating.
So I have a question. This is a perfect segue maybe back in. So what happened?
Discipline and life essentially made me not necessarily drift all the way back into eating meat and not being vegan, but it was also the influence that I was around. My friend, both of us, we decided to go on the journey together, and that changed. And
what are you saying? This happened before line clearance?
Before, before, And that's why I said line clearance for personally, it was a bad influence on my understanding of the processes of. Wait, we're doing intensive labor here. How are you eating 4 hot dogs? What?
Dude, it's a crazy thing. And I love when we can take analogy, and I know we're big on this, but just look at fuel for a chainsaw.
Correct.
Are you going to put, we happen to run a non-ethanol fuel here, and I started doing that a ways back because some equipment sits and the ethanol gums things up, blah, blah, blah. So like, would you take a can, sit it outside, it's got condensation in it, it's 3 months old, and I'm going out, I got a big job, and I'm just going to fill all my saws with this half-ass fuel and expect the saw to perform? And we kind of laugh and joke, and it's very simple, but yet we do that with our bodies. Mm-hmm. We're going to feed them And of course, I'm just picking on this, but we go to the movies and we get the popcorn and they put the
biggest
butter flavor in,
man.
which is all kinds of horrible oils, inflammatory, you know, and we just eat that crap.
Right.
And then like we kind of go home and it's like, I don't feel so
brain
good.
fog,
you know, and it's like, and then we
doped up.
Yeah. And then we want to get up the next day and like perform.
Yeah.
And in many cases, like, you know, it's a high wire act. You're up in a tree and you know, there's people in your care and we're okay with kind of just putting an inferior fuel in our bodies, which is, yeah, it's something to think about.
Which is, this is, I think it's a button it up and then we go to the next
Yeah.
thing. But I think this is the perfect point of, this, since we got you as the beginner, this is kind of like a good way to let the listeners know that as you get into the industry, you are going to be so disoriented with so many things that you have to do.
Happening all at once.
All happening at once. That the last thing you're thinking about is how you're eating. Or maybe even sleep. Because you're like, oh man, I had all day of work. I got yelled at over here. Or I didn't do this support here. I didn't do this correctly. I did that wrong. I don't understand how that works. So I think it's a good way to like bring this conversation to a head for the beginners in the industry. Don't be overwhelmed with the nutrition side necessarily, but try to stay on it as best as you can in the midst of learning all the other stuff that you're trying to learn.
Yep.
I love what you're doing because it's prompting a question.
Good, let's go.
So if you're speaking to someone who's coming in behind you, right? Let's just say you're about to hire a brand noob, like just like boom.
Never did tree work.
Brick visited another guy that was like landscaping in his town. You know, he's like, you're in my town.
Right.
Okay. And they bring him in. Is there a bit of advice? Is there something you would say to them if you were trying to be a positive role model for that person and they come in and like day one, they walk? Because I've seen it here. Guys come in and you're like, this is the chipper. And they're already like this. Their eyes are wide open like, oh my God, that thing could eat me. Is there a thing, a sentence, a phrase, a couple pointers you would give, 1 to 3 things that you would offer somebody new that might help them get their feet on the ground?
First, breathe.
Okay.
Secondly, just be an open mind, be a sponge. And thirdly, retention.
Okay.
Yeah.
So try to remember what
just try to remember, because for me, like I just had this conversation with Brick the other day, and I've been trying to understand the process of my own personal brain. But when information comes at you, or me specifically, I don't know how I receive it. But my goal is to push it to the back of my brain as fast as possible, which then makes my body move in such a way that I got it. Don't talk to me. I just want to go do it because I need to remember. But I've learned to take it easy, breathe, understand what's being said to you, and just put it out.
I got you. So that, and you're saying breathe and I'm breathing. And it is wild how that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
I know.
Right? It's breath work, man. It is an underutilized thing. We get into that rabbit brain or that primal brain, and literally the mechanism of taking a deep breath or 3 will down-regulate that response and give you the ability to process. And that could even be stress. The chipper tire blew out.
Breathe.
Anger, frustration. Let me just sit with that. Let me take 3 deep breaths and then move to problem solving. So I love how you say that.
I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
Just my brain, you nailed a good point for the newcomer. Would you think it's fair to add in that you need to speak up? Back to your point, question.
Oh man.
So please, I'd love for you to articulate your experience with that.
Yes. Yeah. And this actually happened at work a couple times. Brick is big on, got any questions? No, man, whatever. Why? Now this is me now. Why don't you have any questions? Okay. Is it legitimate that you don't have any questions? Okay. So I did this a couple times. I got the orders from Brick. I went out, The worst thing you can do is not ask the questions if you're unsure, but then that has to be introspective. You have to realize if you're unsure or not and ask the question and go from there. Hey, Brick, what did you say that street was? You didn't listen. You didn't ask the question. You didn't write it down. You didn't do what was necessary to remember and retain. That's why I said that. The information to do what you, or maybe you were distracted, to do what needed to be done in that moment. But 100% ask questions, annoy them then. Yeah. So you do not have to call them after that. Otherwise, it's just say, hey, what's up? How you good? You good? Everything's good? That's it.
Yeah. No, and you know what's weird? And I'm speak from experience, and this is just me being a little bit transparent. Back in the day or whatever, before I did some work on ego, which, you're always we never, just to be clear, we never finish dealing with the ego. We will always contend with our egos. And by the way, there are times when it's necessary to execute certain things that the ego is allowed to operate. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll be clear on that. We never really put it to rest or put it to bed. But I think sometimes, and especially in an industry where there's a certain amount of machismo, the question, the inhibition, the reason we won't ask is because we don't want to look like we don't know.
Correct.
And I've heard this analogy before where the ego, allowing the ego to not let us ask a question or receive information is the difference between having an open or a closed hand.
Right.
When I have an open hand and I say, hey, listen, you know what? I don't really understand how you did, let's just say, that basil anchor. I've been just using a bowline with the Yosemite finish, and I see you're using a device, and I don't understand how that works. Now, if you're doing it and I go, yeah, and you're like, any questions? I'm like, nope. No, man, cool. That's awesome.
What'd you learn?
I walk away with nothing. My closed hand, my ego did not allow me to receive that. However, if I can just saddle up that ego and just put it in the box and go, hey, listen, man, I don't understand.
It's too much. It's too much information. I would like to understand.
Yeah, I've received it. Now, can you walk me through it? And then I love what you said about doing it. Because in this industry, we're sort of wired in a way where putting our hands to the work allows the cementing of a concept.
Correct.
We see it, but we're visual tactile most of the time. So we see it, the visual component's part of it, but you let me put my hands on the mechanism and guide me through how now I own it. So the ego can really just, man, and there's been times when I have allowed that to inhibit me. I'm in a group and there's instructing going on, and maybe I'm supposed to be one of the instructors, and I see something I don't understand. And then I realize, like, guess what? When I'm doing crane class or teaching for the CAA, students come in and they have techniques and ways of doing things I haven't seen.
And if I can add on that note specifically. For me, at the Garden State Tree Conference that you were at, I just also want to point out that I've never sat front row for any class.
Yeah, buddy.
But in regards to anything involving trees, I find myself at the front. And to see yourself and others that have been in the industry for a considerable amount of time ask questions, I feel as though the new guys, the new people, should take that as he's been working in this industry for how long? And he still is asking a question. That means that, like Brick tells me all the time, kind of crazy. You're forever a student. You'll never be the master. And once you think you're the master, there's someone that's better than you. But you can practice mastery every day. So the people that think that they, have mastered it or whatever tree work is, they need to get that out of their head, because there's so much still to learn, all aspects of the industry. Climbing arborist is not a plant care healthcare person.
Yeah, correct.
You know,
Yeah.
the day-to-day operations is completely different. You know, so you can always learn something, and having that closed fist is detrimental to you. But I also want to add, you also have to have people that are willing to teach you. There's a, I guess I could say it's a delicate dance of ego with you wanting to learn and then having someone that has cemented the information that's trying to teach you. Because like I said before, if someone is condescending towards you, you're going to feel like crap, you know, like, man, I can't get this. Why can't I get this? I'll never get this. As opposed to, you got it. Just do this. And that'll work.
No, that's...
There's a question formulating in my mind. Because I'm thinking of, you just made a statement that is true. Basically trying to find the right people to be taught by.
And that's why you're here.
And thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate it. It's an honor. Like I said, I do, because I'm always a student, I do enjoy teaching, because when you're teaching, you have to articulate things that you do in a certain way or different ways that make me realize again why I do what I do, and
you're
then
learning
work
twice.
on that again. Exactly. It's twofold.
Yep.
The question is, so you were in line clearance for almost 4 years. Expo, you saw Instagram Expo. You made that essentially that.
I was still in line clearance when I was going to Expo.
No, I know, but I'm just saying when the Instagram Expo you saw, and then you made that's considered the leap of faith, the jump towards, you know, I want more. In order to want more, you kind of have to go out and seek to see what's out there.
Absolutely.
Right? So you did that, which I'm obviously super stoked that you did, because then it turned into this journey. But you made a statement like you have to find out who you're taught by. How does one do that? Like, and I'm not asking you to, you can answer me, but I'm asking you for the audience.
Yeah, you can definitely.
Okay. Yeah.
You have to assess yourself. There's a concept that I kind of studied over time. It's called solipsism, and it's
say that again.
Solipsism.
Solipsism.
So
okay.
it's like it's a concept of you are your world, you know, and everyone likes to say like attracts like, and that is so true, because if you know you can only meet someone as deeply as you've met yourself. So you have to be able to understand where your flaws and shortcomings are, to then assess where someone that's ahead of you, in a sense, where their flaws and shortcomings are, and what you can learn in their journey to make yourself better while working with them. Because there's always going to be the clash. But if a student is teaching a student, it's different than a master teaching a student, because both look at each other as, I could learn something from him and I could learn something from him. So it's cohesive.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going deep. Solipsism, a new word for me.
Me too.
But conceptually, though, and I'm going to just open up a little bit myself here, and we talk about this all the time. I've been doing some deep work.
You have to.
And it's interesting how you mentioned that you can recognize. So like it's through books, it's through some online stuff, it's through coaching, mentorship, my men's group at my church, etc. And I'm peeling back the onion. And what I notice is, like you said, you recognize it in others. So like I'll see areas in my life where brokenness or some type of trauma in my life has created, let's say, a coping skill that may not be the greatest thing or whatever. There's a shortcoming there of how I'm processing information. And what's weird is it's a two-folded thing. I'll see people and I'll say, they've got something unhealed. There's a reason why they see the world that way. But to some degree, it also brings empathy. because I think to myself, wow. And then there's some people that are completely like sitting here with you, you're aware of it. Brick is aware. That self-awareness component, man, is so difficult because you'll see people and you see the brokenness and you see the result of something in their life. And it could be anything. Could be loss, could be trauma, could be a multitude of things. And you realize that's why they speak like they do. That's why they see the world like they do. Why
it's their aura.
It's and you know, like we can have these conversations because we've sort of broken down some barriers. But you can't just willy-nilly go up to some person and go, hey, I see that you're dealing, you know, like
you're dealing with some emotional trauma.
In a way, like sometimes the boundaries have to be there because the way they might treat you in a conversation is we had a guy working here for a while who's just a bundle of unhealed stuff, came from an abusive family, blah, 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 and was just, you know, gossipy and talked about everybody. And it was a very difficult, but you couldn't really dig into it because he just he saw the world how he saw it. And there was no breaking through that. So we had to set a boundary of like, we really can't be around this individual.
Right.
It just was unhealthy.
Yeah. And just the mind is all, and that's where everything begins. So you can't change someone's mind. You can just try your best to understand it as best as you can. And there's so many people online, mindset, but it's to actually internalize the concept of mindset.
Yeah.
I'm legit scared of my own mind because I'm here with Brick because I put that out and I'm going to work with him. Here I am.
Yeah.
You know, and
welcome.
Yeah. You know, and
you're never getting out.
To my understanding, it's like, this is the pinnacle of my career, but I kind of sort of fast tracked it by ruminating on where I want to be and putting the energy out there. And somehow through technology and through energy, here we are. Yeah. And I'm having a great time. I tell him every day, I'm like, we're at work. Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
We're at work right now. What are we doing?
That's cool.
We're up in a big white oak, just cutting trees.
But also, I just want to add for the listeners again, by no means does that mean Desmond is just coasting around and having a good time doing true work, because he is getting hammered almost every day.
Oh, man.
Hammered with the standard, hammered with, I mean, how do you, I'll pass it off to you later, because I want to make sure, because you just made it sound like it's all this fairy dream, beautiful thing that we're doing. There's no hard labor.
That's for them to understand the conversations that we had before. The standard, everything. There's an art in everything. There's a standard that I have to uphold working with Brick, and you can't just skate by doing the bare minimum working with Brick.
Give me 2 to 3 things, 1, 2, 3 that are part of the standard. Like when you say the standard, just because like we throw, and I'm not suggesting we understand what we mean, because we talk about like the 3-legged stool, safety, production, but for the listeners, like, give me just 2 things that as soon as someone says the standard, I go, hey, Desmond, what does that mean to you? Just give me a.
Got you.
You got it? Yeah,
the first one is never let your coworker work harder than you. Share the load. Tree work.
Hold on. Let me tweak that a little bit.
Tweak it? Okay.
That's not it. The idea is you never let your coworker do more work than you by being lazy.
There it is.
Okay.
Don't do that. And I'm speaking to Desmond too, but
he's saying it right to me. That's what I mean. You see, that's the real live hammering right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But just to clarify, the idea is just like, and again, I have a high respect for the military, because concept with history, whole 9 yards. But if you really think about it, in the perfect world, the way they operate as a union, as a unity, as a mass, And the idea of any individual purposely not doing something just so that the other individual can do it irks me to no end.
So I used to have a thing. This is back in the day. Here we go. When we used to move wood by hand. So like all the wood, there was no minis. So you could have a, hickory tree this big or whatever, and you're cutting it to the point you can lift it up. So we would cut into firewood length, quarter if we had to, and then you either loaded the wheelbarrow or two guys loaded. So say you had a 3-person team. I used to say this to my guys. I was like, there's 30 chunks of wood there. We each got 10. If there's, 9 trips, say, with the wheelbarrow, we each have 3. Lazy Joe Schmo goes and has a cigarette break. Now his whole third is picked up by
someone else.
So now I've got 15 pieces of wood to pick up.
That's the standard.
And I've got, whatever the math was, 6 trips to make instead of 3. You've left and you've doubled my workload.
Literally left and made the work harder for me.
Correct. Yeah, and it's weird. Even as an owner, I struggle with that. And sometimes my guys are like, yo, it's good. Like, pack up your truck. And, I'm raking and I'm like, because I just feel so like.
Just go ahead. I got it. I'll do all the work.
I don't want to like, I still don't want to be that dude. Like if I'm out and I'm with my guys, like I'm part of the team. I want to.
You're sharing the
I want to help. I want to carry barrels to the truck and, So anyway, example. Okay. Give us another one. Standard.
Maybe you can use an example.
No, I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
I have one, but I just
give me one in regard to the actual work of being in the tree. There's got to be something. You're in the tree, you're working. What is a standard that relates to the actual, like say pruning?
Oh, pruning, work positioning at all times.
Okay.
That's number one. And
hold on, explain that. Come on, man, break it down. What is work positioning?
Work positioning is rope management, essentially. And this just happened the other day.
Yeah, I know. That's what I said. I know the tree.
Do tell.
Yes. But no, again, I try to break it down the way I try to break it down to you. And I think this is good for the beginners and the listeners 100%. Because they're going to see that there's work and there's almost a dissection of the work.
Right. So another thing in relation to that, line clearance, you walk out on a limb. If you are walking out on a limb and not cutting it from the base, you have spikes that'll help you get out there. And you're not really managing your rope. But just the other day, I was on a pretty small limb. And I was on the limb more than I was on the rope. And my current problem is where do I put my lanyard? I know I'm going to lean this way and figure that out. But where do I put my lanyard and where do I put my feet to make sure that I'm not on the limb in a way that I'm adding more pressure to the limb to break the limb? And put it on the left side. Put it over that lead that's in front of me, triangulate. But I'm just now like conceptualizing and internalizing center point attachment. And that's what essentially changed where I was in the tree. And I just felt so comfortable. I was like, oh, what? I can just casually take my saw out, cut, and now I have another tool. I know. I have another tool, and I'm not holding on to the rope for stability. What do you need that for? Right. We're managing rope. We're not supposed to even be on the tree. We're essentially supposed to be taking care of the tree. So you stomping on the tree is not what we're supposed to be doing. So anyway, I wasn't even looking at where I was on the limb, but I wasn't even on the limb anymore. And he's like, look at where you are, moving my tie-in point and moving my lanyard from the center point attachment. And I'm like,
nice.
So with the standard, this is what I'm trying. This is where I mean he's accepting this part, and if you realize it in Desmond's whole explanation of what he just said, he did not mention anything about pruning or cutting yet.
Sure. Yeah. Got to get out there first, right?
But get out there is one part.
Right.
But how you move through the tree,
sure, of course.
Your body in the multi-dimensional space.
Yep.
Have an appreciation for the tree that you can damage by just standing on a limb. There's all these things that go into what the objective is, which is to go cut the dead limb or prune.
Yep.
But that standard, the time that you leave the trunk to go out to make this proper cut, it's all in there.
Yeah.
And more importantly, to drive home, what I love about it is that ultimately it keeps you the safest possible position all day long so you can go home.
Yep.
It's standard.
No, I love that. Yep. I love that. No, I do. And I could talk about that stuff all day.
Yeah, right.
I started in a lot of big, like, spreadier trees. Like, it takes me back to an elm takedown I did a ways back, whatever. And I did a little video about it, but just taking up the extra, like an extra rig, like just having a whole nother climbing line. And just, I'm tied in back here, which is my central tie-in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lanyarded here. And now what I do is if I'm using like moving rope, I'll keep it just packed up with my VT and a throw ball on it. I just deployed enough, flicked it up, brought it down, clipped in, and now I'm hanging there.
Which is technically an extra long lanyard.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
If you think about it.
Yep.
It's a second climbing line, but
exactly.
Really it's a super long lanyard.
Yep.
So
I vibe with that. I want to just kind of go ahead.
Pivot.
No, I don't even need to pivot. I just want to go back because I wrote a note and we were talking about
real quick, hold that thought. The reason, and again, I'm trying to make this an emphasis because you're the beginner. You're aware beginner in the industry, and I really want to drive home all the points to the listeners that are beginners, maybe even intermediate.
Yeah.
It's just just so
no, and I think you know what? Let me take a breath and say, I think that's important, and that's really, it's a big benefit of having Desmond here because he's an inquisitive, curious person. So he's willing to dig in, which kind of makes him ideal to have this conversation with, 100%. Right? And he's doing the work, which is good.
Appreciate it.
But newer to this part of the industry, but also let your curiosity lead you to this. In other words, you were in a fishbowl, as it were, like a space in the community, and you were just like, hey, I'm in this fishbowl, but there's a room outside of this fishbowl. Look at that. And you're like, and you just climbed out and went and did. And to me, those type of things are important because that's the idea. There's someone somewhere who may be listening, driving in their car, listening on their headset, whatever. And it's like, man, this resonates with me. This is a guy like me. And
we're gonna figure it out together.
Yeah, I can make a move. I can do this. I can progress and grow and it's one quick thing. It's just an interesting little story that I heard years ago about when you're teaching. We were talking about that a little while ago. When you're teaching and you're reinforcing things and you're doing a fundamental technique, and I did that a while back. We talked, I think it was with Mark, about like felling and how I had to break the technique down, and you do it by rote, and it's like muscle memory, like that whole talk. So there's a story of a guy who's a Sifu. He's a master like swordsman, and he has students. And there's like this opening move where they unsheath, you know the story?
I'm ready.
Okay, where they unsheath the sword, and it's like a one strike move. So it's like unsheath, two hands, and strike down. And so one of his students happens to be at the school one day going into the locker room to get something, and he hears a little bit of sound on the dojo floor. And with this, somebody's here. And he goes and he's like, oh, it's Sifu. And he's like, man, what's he working on? And he's like thinking he's going to see like jump spinning back kicks and
the craziest move
ever. And he looks and he's practicing technique number 1.
The first
move, unsheath and boom.
Consistently.
And he's over and over again. He's doing it. And this bothers the student. He's like, I don't understand this. Like, he's supposed to know this stuff. So he lets this percolate in his brain for like a week. And finally he's whatever. And Sifu moves through the thing. He's like, can I talk to you, Sifu, for a minute? And he's like, yeah, sure. What's up? And he says, I was in here about a week ago It was 8:00. No one was here. I came to get something out of my locker, and I heard something, and I went out, and you were practicing technique number 1. He's like, I don't understand what the deal is. And the Sifu says, after all these years, I still can't get it quite right.
Love it.
And I mean, so it's a simple little thing, but it's like, and I practice Qigong and Tai Chi, and I've been doing it for 17 years. And recently our Grandmaster, Master Ting, he passed away not long ago with cancer. Unfortunately, 75 years old, pretty young. But that same mentality, like he would do his form and he would, just practicing the fundamentals, the principles are the key. And so I think we shouldn't, basically that story, the reason I wanted to tell that was born out of the prior conversation of being willing to be humble enough to say, I don't know, or I don't see it. So the humility to practice technique number 1.
Right.
When was the last time you thought about how you saddled your saw?
And conscious the whole time while you saddle the saw.
Yeah. And do you use the same mechanism all the time? Or if you integrate a new piece of gear, a new saw hook, how does that work?
Which ties in really well to the standard. Like doing what Desmond just described about walking out on the limb.
Right.
That's that. That's every step of the way is the first step.
That's sort of that, it's that presence. It's being in the now.
Yeah.
Conscious climate.
It is. It's being in the now. Is that something you guys talk about?
Yeah.
Conscious climate?
Yeah.
I'll let you again.
It's the only thing.
There we go.
We're not even supposed to be up there.
Right.
You wouldn't have a job if, trees didn't need to be taken care of. So, this just came to me. One of the things that I said to one of the new guys that worked with us, that you see the glitz and the glamour of tree work, flying through the trees and all sorts of things like that. And I learned to try to emphasize, you do what's best for the tree and not what's best for you. Yeah. What does that mean? You're not going to cut it all the way back there if you got live tree growing and it's just a small piece of dead wood. You go out there and get that, because now you're doing, I don't want to go out there. Cut that. Why? Lazy.
Yeah.
We're arborists. Supposed to do the hard work.
Yeah, if it was easy, everybody could do it.
True.
So it brings me to a cool thing. Like, I'm hearing this, and in my mind, I'm thinking, well, that's the ethical thing to do. So the ethical arborist. Okay.
Love it.
I see it. I see what's up. I'm not 100% sure. And I saw like some different things, shirts, whatnot. Okay. So just conceptually, what was that born out of? What is it?
That was, okay.
Beautiful.
Go ahead down that hole there.
This is a long story that I'll make short.
Okay.
No, we have a podcast. Please tell.
Okay. All right.
Bring it.
The ethical arborist was a concept that I thought of 2022 before I went to TCI. And I took because people were asking me about it, so I had to then go back in my Instagram memories, and then I realized that it was, I think my first post on it was, we're on the side of the road all the time, it's raining.
Yep.
And there was a worm on the ground, and I just picked the worm up, put it back in the grass. That's being ethical in a sense, being connected to nature,
sure,
whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
But this is going to sound really terrible on their part, but line clearance guys, just throwing their garbage out the window. Like, when we have garbage bags in the truck.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
So I'd go take the garbage that they just, where we're cutting, and put it back in the truck. Throwing garbage in the back of the chips where we got to go dump.
Yep.
People don't like that.
No.
What is, and then it's not even biodegradable stuff that's in there. It's obnoxious blue paper, whatever the case may be.
Gatorade bottles.
And that just made me look at that part of the industry as a unicorn. Why am I the only one that cares this much about the environment and or the trees that we're supposed to be taking care of for the people that need power, you know? And I just made it a thing because that's naturally what all my experiences culminated into that, and here I am. Yeah. And
cool.
it now tied into climbing consciously and ethically. And what I can relate it to is ballet in the tree. You have to be light on your feet, like Brick tells me, but it's more so it's a delicate dance of being on the limb and not being on the limb and being a conscious climber, which is also ethical, you know? So he didn't know me back then, but it just somehow, this all just came together and here I am.
So it's interesting because originally, like, that wasn't like you have a separate Instagram for that now.
Correct.
But you didn't for a while.
I did not.
This idea went back, and then you thought, hey, you know what? I'm gonna make this a thing.
Yes.
And so now I see it on there.
Yes, and it's because of what I put out into the universe, and now I'm an arborist apprentice under
That's
Brick
cool.
Riley.
That's awesome.
Which is not an easy journey. Just have to say that.
Yeah.
Not easy
I'm ready
at
to
all.
go apply at Milburn.
Let's do it. Bro, you can't. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I do say it is funny how you mentioned, and I say this all the time. Like, I have people talk to me about coming to work or whatever. And I'm like, listen, if you're watching the videos that Ben's putting out and you think that's what we do every day, like he's doing, you know, he's connecting all the cool moves. He's putting it to music. The chips are flying out
so
of the,
perfectly,
you know, in slow motion. And then you see a little, time lapse and it's like, oh man, these guys are out there.
Right.
You know, meanwhile, 98, hazy, hot and humid. And you're just like, bro, I just want to be done and go jump in the pool or have a cold drink or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, be careful what you wish for. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Which is what you said before, the glitz and the glamour.
Yeah, and I just want to,
You nailed it.
I don't know how visually, conceptually wise, that can be portrayed, but I personally, like, I'm always going to, I've been saying this for a while since I started putting day one as an arborist and so on and so forth. But I'm always going to look at myself as the new guy. Like, that's where I'm at. But even though I've, gained some experience, I'm always going to look at it as if I'm new, what question am I going to ask? What am I going to think if I don't know this? And that helps me personally to not get complacent in a sense, but make sure that I'm aware of what's going on. Now, with that being said, that's not shown on Instagram.
Right.
The amazing things are shown on Instagram. Not, oh man, today's hot, bro. No.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, but it's coming from Mark Chisholm. He's
right.
one of them. You know, we know it's 12 degrees outside. Listen to this. He throws a stick down, and it, I mean, I can't hear it, obviously, but it hits the ground and must sound like it's cold.
Right.
You know, but let's just say there are several people that try to expose, maybe show the true side of the reality of tree work.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think, obviously we have the tree awareness page, but I have my own personal one. And that's why sometimes I'll just post up me talking about some challenge.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, by the way.
Broken,
same here.
Because, I mean, that's the reality that we're in, I mean, the days Instagram has that polished version of tree work, and I think it's important. And this is why on my personal site, I think it's important once in a while to dig into the dirty side of it. Like, oh, the chipper tire blew, and like how people process. And it's in those moments I tend to get some of the most DMs from people like, hey man, listen, I was having a day today. I was wrestling with the real stuff. And you even mentioned about, like the heat and everything. Like, it's a grind, and it can look romantic. And we talked a little bit about, and you know what's funny? I actually think it is. I think of tree work and like being in rope and saddle a little bit like being a sailor on a sailing vessel or being a cowboy, you know, like back in the day. Like these were like romantic sort of hardcore, hands-on, down and dirty type of jobs. You know, old school loggers when they would float those log flotillas down rivers and guys are running on them. And, you know, and I think, you know, the world slowly but surely is losing a little bit of that. And I think we talked about this in a different podcast, I believe, was like the reason some of us connect is there is a shared struggle. So I see you across a trade show floor or at a comp, and maybe I don't have a chance to come right up and run up and say like, hey, what's up? But if I look at you and we give each other like that, it's like a, hey, how you doing? But it's also like, I see you. I know what you do. And not only that, but I've seen you before. And that means to me that you're still here. And you still being here makes me feel like I'm not alone in the struggle. So I don't know if there's any wisdom in that or any truth in it.
No,
but that's how I interpret it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
and
no, you forget. Please
again, for me, it's respecting your tree care veterans. Like I've been trying to put out there a lot more because there is wisdom in the day to day. People look for the complete, you know, picture of, but like you said, we're on a continuum. Nothing's really like linear. Like it's all over the place. Something might happen today that might not happen tomorrow, but because the routine aspect of tree work on the day to day, no incidents happening. That's what we want. That's what creates this concept of being linear. But if it's something as minute as like a frustration that you had, something that you brought from home to work, as opposed to like a chipper breaking down. Unfortunately, I have to say this too. There are things that happen at work that Brick has pointed out to me that your attitude can spawn a series of events where things can turn not in your favor. You don't change your attitude, bad things are going to happen. And I'll say it. So, what was it? It was the oil, right? Something happened with the oil. This has happened a million times, you know, but he noted that I wasn't completely
yourself,
completely not in the mood that I'm usually in. I'm fine. Whatever. We could discuss that further. But I was,
you were blocking.
I was.
But just I want to make it clear too. I kept coming.
Yeah.
So he had to block it like 27 times.
Right.
Just so you know.
So I'm sitting there, getting the saw ready, stuff like that. Pick up the saw. Well, obviously start running the saw and everything like that. And I feel the liquid on my chaps and on my boots. And I immediately look at him and I'm like, because even though I didn't want to accept that my attitude at that particular time was not what he was used to and or comfortable with, I was wrestling with, am I okay? And should I be doing this now?
Interesting.
And this is the dance that I have to do continually because of line clearance. Like, am I just doing the job because we just got to work, or do I need to take a break and then get back into it? So in that moment, because that happened, I laughed and I was like, thanks, Brick.
Yeah.
You know, let me get myself together and make sure that furthermore, to make this cut, you know, I'm good now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. And I'll ask you, because you're in a supervisory position. And I was going to ask Mark the one day when we started talking about bringing things from home. And it can be dramatic sometimes. I mean, maybe you have a new kid and you're up late. And again, we got to perform physically. I talk a lot about capacity. Like some days I come in and I have a capacity like this. Other days it's like that.
Mm-hmm.
So my ability to tolerate those things can vary day to day. And I think all humans are like that.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to sort of like ground someone because of, okay. Like in other words, like I'm not, listen.
No,
yeah, I got it.
We're open.
I got it. Yeah, I got it.
There's no awkwardness.
Yeah, I got it.
That's cool.
I'm just literally, there are people watching it on video. I'm literally saying what he said. You asked me a question, and I'm passing it along to this. This is a student who's always working, and passing it to the student.
Yeah.
So I'd love him to answer it because people hearing it from him is going to be more profound than hearing it from me, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's value in hearing it from both sides.
Yeah.
I think great value.
Because I think
I hope you're going to talk about the pin oak tree.
Which one?
The pin oak tree, when same thing, your attitude, and then on your way
terrible.
back from
and
the limb walk on the way back. Okay, can you please set up the whole video?
Yeah, so that's not what I want to talk about, but it was a very interesting day, and that is the point. If we can remember what day that was, but that was the pivotal moment that changed my whole perception of, is it me? Anyway, attitude was terrible in the morning. Whatever I had going on, I didn't want it to, I guess, affect work, but it did. It took a long time to get my pressic on. I think I had put the wrench on wrong. I think I took too long. Took way too long. And then I get up, after a while, get up in the tree, and I am not moving consciously at this point.
I have to jump in. So you got to set up the whole scene into, we have hard conversations, right? I didn't just say, hey, go climb, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it went.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Okay. So the idea that it works is I addressed it first thing in the morning, to your point, did you ground, whatever, and I'm telling them pretty much up front, like, listen, I don't like the way you're vibing right now. Nothing about it is good, and you're asking me to trust you to put you into a tree, which if something happens, it's my responsibility to take care of that situation. And I do not want to deal with that kind of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't want to see anybody get cut. I don't want to see anybody falling out of a tree. Even if I don't like you, I don't want to deal with that situation.
Of course.
That's just the reality of, like, hey, man, like, we're human beings. We fall apart. We break. We slash ourselves open. It can be really gruesome, really fast. With that being said, conversation more or less goes to that. And I'm in this weird dichotomy, as you say. Like, I'm in this weird space. Like, am I being too hard? But at the same time, where's the opportunity to grow? And I'm battling with it, and he still has the attitude. It's still pushing a little bit. I'm like, all right, I'm telling you right now, and I'm paraphrasing, but I pretty much said, I'm going to tell you right now, this climb is on you. Did I say that before you went up in the tree?
Mm-hmm.
This climb is on you. Fully mentally prepared that I'm going, because I was up in the tree with them as well, but fully prepared that I do not like anything about this, and I wanted to keep him on the ground.
Yeah,
I wanted to tell him he's not climbing today.
Yeah,
but I was
you're
like,
on your own.
What?
You're on your own.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I'm in the tree, and then I'll make that dicey decision as to where I can officially cut it off 100%. Right. Now he has some challenges getting his. Mind you, I'm not helping him with his hitch. You better tie it correctly. You have a bad attitude? Fine. If you don't tie that hitch correctly, you're not climbing.
You're not climbing. Mm-hmm.
Why would I tie the hitch for you when you can't tie it? You put the hitch wrench on wrong. I'm not saying anything. You're gonna figure it out because it's just not gonna work. So that's literally how this started off in the beginning. He got situated. I went up to the tree and I went into like the safe space, so to speak, the spot where I can be essentially a hawk and just make sure I'm watching. I felt like that's the setting of the scene.
Yes. So yes. So all of the distractions I was not being aware of, which then led to me not being in the zone and me not communicating with him in terms of him giving me pointers on how to move through the tree. Mm-hmm. And there was a point where it's like, in my mind, there was a point where I was like, should look back and talk to him, say something to him. He's just sitting right there, like at the corner of my arms. He's just like, you could talk to me. I'm here.
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, I'm going to go out on this limb being stubborn, essentially. And yeah, I got way.
And it was, I'll tell you right now, from the trunk out to the limb, I would say he did a good job going out. I would say he's about 30 feet, 25 to 30.
I'm far out there.
Good limb walk. Not just little baby stuff.
Yeah,
legit.
yeah. Nice.
Where I'm concerned.
Yeah. And got way too far out, and I had a rough time coming back. And that, again, Dunning-Kruger, my attitude, introspection, and all of that. Line clearance, I got spice. I'll just easily walk back.
Yep.
Now I'm not managing my rope correctly. Now I'm not V-rigging back. Now I'm not doing anything of the sort. Now I don't know where my fall plan is. Now I'm not asking break nothing.
Yeah, you're shut down.
Yeah. And I did that to myself, and I literally slipped between the,
Union?
The union that I was in. And then I was, you know what?
Well, hold on. Let me
go ahead.
Better. So he did. He was trying to pull himself. You know how pull the slack and then tend the slack.
Mm-hmm.
He was still at the phase of when he over pulls.
Mm-hmm.
Like just like brain nervous energy, but he over pulls and he's up higher and leaning forward back towards the trunk. You know I'm going with this, right? So he kept doing. He did it one more time, and then he went off.
Yeah.
What we're talking about, the fall plan is. For me, this is something that I taught myself essentially, but the idea is that at some point we're going to fall. Not a cool idea, but if I'm going to fall, I'm going to pick the one that's going to do the least damage.
Of course.
So the fall plan is always pick the union that's closer to you. So if you're going to fall, you fall on purpose in that direction so that you have like a plan.
Yeah, you're not going to smash the trunk if possible.
Exactly.
If possible.
Or even if the union's pretty far. I mean, you got and you know this, but to the listeners, the idea is that you fall. Most people think like it's a short, and then you don't know where you're going. You don't know what you land on. You don't know what you're gonna hit. Like it's the whole thing.
It's out of control.
Exactly. So, anyways, he falls on the non-falling side, the side that I would, you know what I mean? Like if I was talking to him, like, hey man, where are you gonna fall? Oh, I'm gonna fall on this side. Cool. Well, he falls the wrong way and goes for a big swing. And I'm like, dude, I cannot believe this right now. So he doesn't hit anything, thankfully.
Yay.
Doesn't actually hit anything. Rough on the way down into the swing, and then I'll hand it back over to you. Like you said, you pretty much were like, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, and in that moment, I was like, "Yep, I gotta adjust my frequency, and I have to adjust the fact that I now have someone. I wanted this. This is what I wanted. I have someone that's willing and capable of teaching me, and here I am, being a child." Being stubborn, like not communicating. He could have just been on the ground, but he came up in the tree with me to give me, and that's another thing too, is like, in production, I realized that there's not enough time for that for someone to actually really teach you. So I wasn't maximizing that opportunity only because of where I came from. And I had to learn the hard way.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
I think this might even segue perfectly. Okay. I know you're picking it up, but the key words in there is what he's saying: the stubbornness, the ego, the hardness.
Yeah.
Which is quote.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you want me to roll into that? All right. Yeah. So. I think it is. I think it is perfect. So yeah. So the other day, I've been.
Okay,
I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I know a lot of folks listening probably do. They're listening to podcasts, audiobooks, things like that elevate. And I just recently finished up the book Atomic Habits, and he quoted this quote by Lao Tzu. And I just think it's interesting because we talk a lot in this podcast about continuing education, about learning, about growth. We talk about experience versus bad experience, meaning repeating bad stuff for 30 years rather than you know, or year after year doing the same thing versus learning. And of course, you know, being the aging arborist that I am, I need my specs. But I just thought this was cool, and I shared this. It just says, men are born soft and supple. Dead, they are stiff and hard. Plants are born tender and pliant. Dead, they are brittle and dry. Thus, whoever is stiff and inflexible is a disciple of death. Whoever is soft and yielding is a disciple of life. The hard and the stiff will be broken. The soft and the supple will prevail.
Heavy, man, heavy. So I see the parallel in there, in the idea of how you carry yourself, how you move through the day, move through the tree. When you have that day happen, you wanted to be stubborn, hard, can't teach me, can't talk to me. I have a bad attitude. Something happened at home. This is not cool. That leads to not necessarily death, and let's hope not, but leads to
certainly brokenness of some sort.
Exactly.
Dude, and I love how you do this. I did, like, these are the conversations. This is why this is awesome. This is why this is fun. But like, I was just thinking about it. I was like thinking the other day, just in terms of just tree work, like take that right into tree work. The most difficult trees we have to do and the most unpredictable are the brittle and dry, the dead. Think about all the ash trees we're dealing with and how unpredictable, and how guys, you know, they usually try to like master the dead stuff, and now we're going, maybe not a good idea. And then I think about a willow that has like all these hanging, and the wind pushes on it and they go,
float.
They don't resist. Now, I've seen willows blow down and I've seen them break, but like in terms of process of how they diffuse energy, and then I just get into my own Tai Chi practice and I think about yielding. You know, when force is met with force, you can wind up with something broken, but I can touch that force and I can become pliable and soft and move my body and turn and yield, and the energy goes past me. So sometimes we talk about Tai Chi in terms of the physical, but it's also I can Tai Chi something negative. Something comes at me directly. Somebody driving on the road screaming at me, spit's flying out of their mouth, and I'm like, have a good day, buddy. Or I'm like, yeah, man, you're having a bad one there, ain't you? You know, so you kind of like, you Tai Chi it. Or
I like that.
You know, somebody comes on, we talked earlier about people triggering us, you know, and really that comes down to knowing thyself, to where we get so well adjusted that the triggers don't come. And look, it's a work in progress. I'm certainly not there by admission. But yeah, the soft and the pliable are students of life, disciples of life. So I think that's pretty. That's
cool. Pretty heavy.
Yeah.
You haven't thought
No,
that?
that's as heavy as it can get. Bars.
Bars, exactly. Bars. You're gonna have to articulate that a little bit.
I have no idea what that is.
You can't leave Paul hanging like that.
Yeah.
You can't. Explain a short version, and then if it turns into something
Yeah,
awesome.
no, it's just it's the words are there, but the whole concept, you have to dissect every aspect of that. What does that mean? Like, we're men, we're hard, but what does that mean? We can bend, not break. Like, if you're too hard, you'll pop a blood vessel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, that's very interesting.
What is bars?
Bars is just bars is just what? You got to explain it, man.
You
really?
No, you're the guest.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Bars is when something.
Tell them where it's coming from.
Bars is when something. It's a hip hop, right? You know.
Okay. Yeah. Hip hop.
It's when something hits. It doesn't have to rhyme, but it's when something resonates, essentially. When you say bars. You know.
All right. Cool.
That's why, since we always talk like this, all day, and hip hop is an influence definitely for him and for me in a newer way. So the way I talk and say certain things, he'll say bars, and I'm like, oh yeah, because it does. Sometimes it can rhyme, but it also has a resonance.
Makes total sense to me.
Which is like what you read, like the hard, hard supple kind of thing. It's the same thing. Where if anything, it would inspire your brain to dissect it more to see what you can get out of it.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. See, I would rather that. You see, you should have said it first. That was eloquent.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So it's again, the articulation or the comparison between the two. I think for the new, again, beginners and even intermediate tree workers, I won't even say climbers only, but there's that parallel. Like you have Desmond Edwards, who you were before you and I started working together, and now you are the ethical arborist, but the beginning of it. But it's lovely and interesting to see how they go side by side as the growth continues. Right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think that's where a lot of people struggle with. They want to be the whole tree guy, I'm the best in the world, and not do the work. And there's a constant struggle between those two. I'm not sure, but that seems to be something that seems to be why I really wanted to be a part of this podcast, was to make this conversation go in that direction for the listeners. Which will kind of segue into what I wanted to mention before. You're coming from line clearance.
Mm-hmm.
You made the leap from line clearance because you didn't want to do it anymore. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it just didn't fit me trying to grow. Essentially, I felt like I got to a cap, and there was no room for growing, whether it's education or skill set.
I have something this may go another 20 minutes. We talk a lot about growth on this podcast. We talk about skills. That's the obvious stuff. But we also definitely get into developing the self, being self-aware, personal development. And I've heard you mention this, Brick, that to become the best, or when I say best, the best version of self, I don't mean the best like I'm the best. Best that we can be with the gifts and talents we've been given, I guess. I guess the question is why or how is that component, the self-development portion, the like peeling back the onions, like not everybody does it who is in the arboricultural space, okay? But why is it what I guess
you got it.
It's why is it important, or better yet, how does a self-development component, which is completely unrelated? So I can come in and I can be skilled in the tree. I can put trees on the ground, notch drop. I'm very skilled at what I do, this person X. And then I add the self-development component, or I don't. If I don't, I still come in tomorrow, I still trim, prune. How does this component make me better? Why is it worth it?
I asked you this.
Yeah.
It expands your ability to connect and associate with various people. You're not closed. You're not hard. You're not dismissive. And it's more of a mindset thing. It has nothing, because I don't know if you've seen me post a lot. Everything that I've learned so far has nothing to do with tree climbing. So I don't even approach tree climbing the same way that I used to, because it has nothing to do with that. It's more being conscious of your surroundings, more being conscious of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and just being in the space, just understanding where you are in that space. And that takes the internal work, like, not being fixated on something specific. You have to be internal and work with your external environment and be conscious.
I like it.
You nailed it. And then I think to really bring it home is, I'm trying to think of the quote or the meme, but something where it's like, you want the world to change. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, it'll change your internal world.
Exactly. So in doing that, then you change the world.
Mm-hmm.
In doing that, you leave the world a better place for everybody else. That's why. Because if you do the work, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. The idea is at some point, in the work that you're doing, you're going to influence people to do better, and they also help change the world. And I know it sounds like hokey and deep and woo-woo, but like I'm being dead serious in that the work that I do every day, I'm not thinking about the people. That's not what I'm saying. But I know that, and I told you this before, when I'm into the craft, when I'm into the process and learning about myself, obviously the first people I'm thinking of is obviously my wife and my kids.
Yep.
You know, they're going to be like the immediate beneficiary,
sure, of course,
you know, of my, you know, journey.
Showing up better.
Exactly, you know, and then, but the thing is, at some point, let's say in the tree world, at some point, you're going to talk to a homeowner. Something's going to come up.
Mm-hmm.
Are you really prepared to be the person to have that conversation with that person? Is it necessarily from tree work, or is it from the work that you did?
To connect with that person. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Exactly, and that's why I'm a big proponent of it. Is that, but I don't want to say it's like selfish, but like I'm learning so much about myself that I haven't stopped.
Yep.
So why wouldn't I do that? It just doesn't make sense. So when then situations come up, you know, and I'll give you an example, and it didn't even significantly mean anything, but I went up to a job, work order went to a job, par 3 golf course, do my training in the morning. This woman walks up. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I got my implant off. I'm training. I'm getting ready to climb. I think it was like 20, maybe like 30 degrees outside. I'm getting ready to go climb a tree, take care of the objectives that I got. I don't want to talk to anybody. This woman's walking closer. Nobody's in the parking lot. It's still kind of dark in the morning. I'm like, let me put my implant on. And she stops like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm warming up, training, jump rope and stuff to climb trees. She goes, that's interesting. I never see anybody out here this early in the morning. I always do my walks. I'm like, cool, that's awesome. Walking's good for you. Like, you know, I actually like walking too, you know, just try to connect. And she's like, that's interesting. I came over, and I forget, somewhere in Italy, but she came over here. Her husband passed away. Her kids moved out. She's lonely. She can't really talk to anybody, but she goes for walks all the time, right? So is it a connection where her world's better? I think our worlds are better from that, but had I not done all the training up to that point, I probably wouldn't have opened up to have that conversation with her. So
you would have shut her out.
I would have, exactly. And then at the end, I'm like, oh, what's your name? She goes, Moon. And Desmond knows, but one of my favorite things in the whole world is the moon. At nighttime, anytime, anywhere I am, if the moon's out, there's an immediate sense of peace that comes over.
Do you howl?
What?
Do you howl?
I do not howl. No, I do.
I had to ask.
That's right. And it's funny because that's going to come up in my mental imagery every time it happens. But my point is, like, that's my favorite thing in the whole world. She said that. I'm like, that's your name? She's like, yeah, that's your name. My name. So my name is Brooke, and it's nice to meet you. And then we part ways.
Simple.
But simple, but it's not, you're going to change the world. But the work that I did up to that point, that conversation is different. And same with her.
Mm-hmm.
That's why. So it just so happens I'm in the tree industry, and I have a craft that's a very hard craft to get good at. Tree climbing. It's really hard. But in the work of doing that, I realize it goes parallel with self-development. Now, to your point, there may be somebody who's good at tree climbing and is not that person. That's fine. I'm not saying, but I would highly encourage that person to become the self-development person, because at some point when the time is up, that is what's going to return to the surface before you pass away.
Yep.
It's not going to be, I used to slay trees all the time. I was the best there ever is, best there ever was, and the best there ever will be. Like, that's not the case.
Who's going to care about that?
Dude, it's like it's like you don't know what's in a tea bag until it's put in hot water.
Wow.
So like what comes out of you when the chips are down, when
Exactly.
And I don't know if you remember, and I'm not going to go off on my whole story, but if you remember at Garden State Tree Conference and at TCI Expo, I gave a talk on time. And I told a story of the guy. We're ready. I will tell the story. We're pulling away from the thing. Same thing. It's like light flurries. We're done for the day at a big complex. And I see this older gentleman walking toward me. I just fired up the bucket, and it's like in first gear, and I can tell he's got that look in his eye, and he wants to talk.
You got to come and talk.
And he's walking, he's looking at me, and like, by the way, I was scheduled to give this talk on time and on connecting with people, and I'm ready to drive away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So it was like guy going, do you really believe this stuff you're about to teach? Because you're literally about to drive away from
irony.
this dude. And I went, roll the window down. Anyway, the long story short of it is he was 80-some years old, went out to get the mail. He lived with his son in a condo, locked himself out. It's 25 degrees. He's in his flannel pajama pants and a T-shirt. And he has a heavy Spanish accent. Anyway, long story short, Michaela's in the truck with me. I get out, da-da-da-da-da. I boost her up on the back balcony. I'm like, try the sliding door. She climbs over. She's 105 pounds. I boost her up. She climbs because she climbs. Gets in, goes in, opens the door, lets the dude in. We're on there Monday. I'm in the bucket, and I see this guy driving. Big smile for the camera. I see this guy. I'm like, who the heck is this smiling at me? It's this dude. And he's got a bottle of like Spanish champagne and his son. And it's like this big, like the whole thing just lit me up.
He was grateful.
And I'm like, I was ready to walk away from this dude.
Yeah, exactly.
So shame on me. But I did allow that to kind of work in my head and my heart and make that thing. But anyway, I don't know.
Got something?
I don't have anything.
No.
So, because here's what I'm thinking.
I'm listening.
I want to take all this and I want to talk, because we talked a little bit about, line clearance, like a little bit came out and it's like it was an uncomfortable situation. You needed to move. We want to be careful because you mentioned something earlier that there are, in fact, many disciplines within our trade, which is, I think, part of what makes it attractive.
Right.
There are good and bad and average people in everything. PHC, line clearance. My encouragement is, and it's cool, I don't hide from the fact that I'm a Christian. I'm not going to preach on here ever, but I'm not going to hide from my faith. But there's a cool component to being a believer where it says we are to be the salt and the light in the earth. So the salt has some seasoning. So we're willing to have those difficult conversations in love, right? We speak the truth in love. But the other side of it is the light. And it's in those negative and dark places, we're going to be willing to be sort of the light. And I think what I'm hearing is that self-development component, if we're willing to do that, allows us to show up in our little spheres as salt and light for first your family, your friends, your loved ones, but also the community. And I think sometimes I even talk about CPR and first aid, how, in the tree crew, that's definitely for your mates in case someone gets hurt. But how often are you on the road traveling, parked somewhere, you're at an intersection, something can happen. So you have the knowledge to provide first response, but also you come with this heart of salt and light, and you've worked on yourself to be able to have these conversations with people and help somebody out. So I think that's kind of a cool thing. Of Jim Rohn too. Jim Rohn, he was before Tony Robbins.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know
his whole thing was work harder on yourself. Work harder
than you do on your job.
Harder on yourself.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think that's a good way to just emphasize what we want to let the listeners know is there's different aspects. And I try to think of people. You are kind of person I connect with from line clearance. I know that there's Matt Meckley and Caitlin Johnson that are fellows. Know them a little bit. You got PhD. I had the Chris Brown from Aspen. So like the more you connect to, or you can be in any part of the industry.
Sure.
But I love what you said. Like you do the work to be that person where you're at. And sometimes it's just not the right place for you.
That's all.
Yeah, and that's fine.
It's not throwing shade at any particular part of the. I just want to be careful and be clear on that. Like it's just, what are you bringing to the table? Yeah. Are you bringing?
I know some guys that like do line clearance. That they love it.
Yep.
Just every aspect of it. Just it wasn't where I felt like I had the most ability to grow and learn.
Cool. So you guys feeling good about this conversation?
I do.
Are we feeling like this is a good spot to land the plane, as it were?
This is a good spot.
So if I can, just because I want to do this for folks that come on, Desmond, if people want to find you, whether it's on the Ethical Arborist or on your your socials, what's the best way they can interact with you? They can send you a DM. Give us your socials.
It's at the Ethical Arborist, and everything else is for a further conversation that we're not going to have right now.
I know. I saw that. Yeah. We will dig into that one man. We'll get there. But listen, man.
You want to give your phone number out too? Just have
absolutely
call directly?
not. No? Absolutely not. Don't call me after 9.
Address,
I'm just kidding.
But anyway, listen, from my perspective, and I'll kick it over to Brick to kind of close us out, but I want to say thanks for being here.
I appreciate
for your vulnerability, for your ability to just kind of say, hey, man, this is who I am. These are the things I'm working on. I think it's really important for people to just process all that. There's a lot of closed souls out there in protection mode, and it's hard to receive when you're like that. And I think that's what I like about you. And I could see that, man. I don't know if it's just in your face or your eyes or your presence or what, but like the first few times we interact, and I'm like, yeah, this dude's real, and he's willing to have a conversation and be open. So I'm super grateful for that. So thanks for coming in.
Appreciate you having me.
All right. Yep,
I'll close it up with I'm pretty sure the listeners want to know if Desmond got special favors to come on to the podcast because Brooke Riley's the co-host.
Yeah.
But I do honestly, like I said, that might have been the pivotal moment when the pinhook where you took a little nice swing, but Paul brought it up, and I wanted to have you on because it's a beautiful balance point to the agent arborist, where there is a sense of what level you're at is one part of it, but also what are you bringing? You're going to bring something to the industry that everybody benefits from it. So I appreciate you coming on, even though there was a momentary pause in your response when asked. But it's good. It's always good to spend time and talk. Now we just make it more official.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yep.
All right, man.
Wrap it up.
Thanks. Woo!